All right, our next speaker, Sangeet Paul Choudary, is a global platform strategy thought leader. He's a best-selling author and helps develop competitive strategy and positioning to exploit new technological shifts, and is a senior fellow at the Tusher Strategic Initiative for Technology. He is a faculty member at the Fast Future Executive. Please welcome Sangeet. Him. Apologies, not sure what happened to our speaker here. Oh, is he on zooming in? Okay, there we go. My apologies. All right, there we go. Hello. Can you hear us?
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'm really excited to be talking about the idea of reshuffle this morning. And the key uh, idea I want to talk about is how AI or how we often misunderstand where the real value of AI lies and how to really think about the AI opportunity. Over the past 5 years or so, I've repeatedly been in conversations, whether in boardrooms or on social networks, where I've repeatedly seen people misunderstanding the real AI opportunity. And the way that usually plays out is we see AI as a way to speed up our tasks, to automate things, to augment our capabilities, to essentially do what we always do, just do it better, faster, cheaper. So we have what I think of as a very task centric view of AI. And this often leads us to, in fact, leads even the best of experts to predict things that almost never come to pass. So back in 2015, Jeffrey Hinton, the godfather of AI, had predicted that it's completely obvious that AI would outperform human radiologists by 2021. And hence, he had also then predicted that people should stop training radiologists on that basis. So he had just assumed that because AI starts outperforming radiologists, the job of the radiologist goes away. And the reason these predictions very rarely come true, and I'm not saying that AI doesn't take jobs. In fact, it does, but not for the reasons we think that AI substitutes jobs actually. The reason these predictions often don't turn out correct and often end up in fallacies is because we assume that jobs are very static constructs and that AI's effect plays out in only one of two ways. You either replace a task, and we call it automation, or and essentially provide a machine substitute for human performance on that task, or you augment a task, and we call that augmentation, which is you help humans perform better in concert with machines. Both of these are what I think of as a task centric lens. And the fallacy is that we often think over here that AI's effect plays out in either replacing or improving tasks, and we think of our jobs as made up of tasks. And when AI takes away a sufficient number of tasks, our jobs go away. If AI helps us do those tasks better, we get to perform better. So the problem with this task-centric lens is that we very often fail to realize that the impact of any technology actually plays out not just at the level of individual tasks, it plays out at every level of the economy. Any technology has an impact at the level of the tasks. It then impacts workflow, that impacts organizational systems, and it impacts how companies compete in the competitive ecosystem. So if you really want to think about the impact of AI, you have to move away from thinking about what AI does on specific tasks and how well it performs on specific benchmarks. And you have to think about what are the ways in which AI is going to reconfigure the entire system. One of the fallacies that often is associated with AI is that we assume that AI has to be really intelligent. We have to get to AGI in order for it to start having really transformative effects. But one of the key lessons that we get from the history of technology is that a technology doesn't have to be incredibly intelligent for the socio-technical system around it to be completely transformed. The system transforms irrespective of that. And a really good example to think about that is the shipping container. The shipping container is what I would call a rather dumb technology. You wouldn't think of it in the same bucket as AI, but the shipping container is arguably the most powerful technology that has transformed, one of the most powerful technologies to have transformed how the world works in the past 100 years. And when you think of the first order effects of the shipping container, the first order effects were actually automation of tasks, because before the shipping container, goods used to be loaded manually onto the ship and off the ship. And the reason for that was that cargo was not standardized, it was break bulk, so you needed humans to handle it. And with the shipping container, you could now automate the ports and manage cargo handling in an automated way. And if we had just stopped by looking at automation, we would just have stopped at the port. But the real effect of the shipping container unlocked not just automation, but coordination. And what I mean by that is, at one point, trucks, trains, and ships agreed to use the same dimensions of the shipping container, which enabled for the first time the creation of an intermodal transport system. So goods could be shipped from any source to any destination without needing to move the mode of transportation. And that intermodal transportation made logistics reliable. It enabled, manufacturing to get unbundled. Before that, everything used to be manufactured in co-located facilities because the cost of moving goods was very high and shipping was unreliable. But once shipping became reliable because of intermodal transport, we started seeing global supply chains happen, and today's whole logic of globalization rests on that logic of intermodal transport. And so the nature of shipping changed, the nature of manufacturing changed, and the very nature of geopolitics and globalization fundamentally changed because of this one single invention. So my key point again is that the effect of a technology happens not just at the level of individual tasks, because if it was just that, port automation of freight would have been enough. But it actually plays out at the level of larger organizational systems, and it plays out in terms of the eh, the rules of competition that emerge in response to that new technology. So, in response to the shipping container, fundamentally new countries came up and succeeded for the first time. Think of Singapore. It really came up in response to the logic of the shipping container. And in response, ports like Liverpool in the UK, for instance, um, lost out because and the entire manufacturing hub associated with Liverpool lost out because they were structured around the logic of a previous technology, and the new technology completely rejigged the system. So the real point that we need to think about is that when we think about the impact of AI today, we have to think about it not just at the level of what it does to individual tasks, but what it does first and foremost to the rules of competition in the larger ecosystem. Does AI provide a fundamentally new way to rethink how companies should be created, how companies should differentiate themselves, the basis on which companies should compete? In response to that, new organizational systems with new capabilities will come up in order to compete on this new basis, and jobs will get affected not because AI can take away certain tasks, or a human using AI will take away some other tasks. It's not one of those factors. What really matters is jobs get impacted not through automation and augmentation, but because companies transform to compete in fundamentally new ways, and hence they start valuing fundamentally new types of jobs. And the reason all of this happens is because the impact of technology first plays out outside and by first changing what is valuable, what is not, and on the basis of which the companies that compete fundamentally start competing on new basis if the old levers of value do no longer hold true. And a very simple way to think about how this affects not just our jobs but also competition and the economy is to think of the example of the typist when the word processor first came in. So when the word processor first came in, a lot of people would have said exactly what people say today when you think about AI. They say AI won't take your job, but someone using AI will. And it doesn't make sense because it assumes that jobs are fixed and you either have AI take it, or somebody who's learned how to use AI starts taking it. It assumes that jobs will always remain fixed. But the example of the typist is interesting because it tells us something very unique. And that is that when the word processor came in, it did not take away the task of typing. It, in fact, made humans better at typing. Despite that, the job of the typist went away because the job was never structured around the task. The job was structured around managing a problem in the system. And the problem was that before the word processor, editing documents was very expensive, which meant that being really good at typing so that your error rates are low was highly valuable. The moment the word processor removed that cost of editing documents, it meant that you did not have to be very good at typing in order to type. And so the specialized job of the typist went away because their specific skill was no longer valued, not because AI took away the task, but and not because someone using AI took away the task, but because the reason that that task was valued in the old system no longer held in the new system. And that is how jobs get impacted when AI comes in. Similarly, when you think about the impact of the level of competition, it's again interesting because with AI, if all we do is we start hunting for productivity gains and start trying to figure out how to make our workflows agentic, we lose the entire point of a new technology. The whole point of a new technology is to fundamentally rethink how you compete and figure out a new way to compete, which changes the logic of the industry. So let me take a very simple example over here. Before the rise of TikTok, traditional social networks used to compete on the logic of a social graph, which essentially meant a few different things. The first thing it meant was that as a creator, you needed people to follow you before you had influence. As a consumer, you needed to follow people before your feeds could be filled. And as a social network, if you did not have a well established social graph, it was very difficult to build one. And if your competitor had a well established social graph, it was very difficult to break that because users would not take all of their friends to a new social network. Now, all of this was structured for the world before AI. TikTok came up as the first AI native social network because it reimagined the logic of a social network and it reimagined the basis of competition using the capabilities of AI. So TikTok realized that if you could make the videos small enough and you could have multiple you could track all the various ways in which users were interacting with the video and capture all of that data, you could start serving videos and start showing videos to consumers without requiring a social graph. TikTok instead started creating a behavior graph where it linked consumers to the right content based on the kinds of interactions that they had done in the past. And hence, it was able to give value to creators because creators did not need to have followers before their content would be seen. Consumers didn't need to follow somebody for their feeds to be populated. And so it was able to bootstrap a new social network from scratch because it refused to play by the logic of competition that existed at that time. And today, all these other social networks, whether Instagram or YouTube, which started before TikTok, now follow what is called the open graph. They no longer just follow the social graph, they have incorporated the same idea of a behavior graph. But the key point that this illustrates is that when you have this technological shift where new technology with fundamentally new properties comes up, the worst thing or the most irrelevant thing you can do is to simply keep competing in the same way and just look for productivity gains and improved performance. Because initially, Instagram and YouTube did exactly that. They used AI to improve their recommendation systems, which were built on the social graph, but they did not really change the logic of the recommendation system. And that is what enabled a new player to come in and beat them at their game when in an industry where at least at that point analysts believe that it was just impossible for a new player to come in. And so that's the key point I would like to leave all of you with. When you think about the value of or the impact of AI, the real opportunity that AI presents is the same opportunity that the container presented, which was if you're a company, just like Singapore, use the logic of the container to reimagine what its position should be in the global landscape. Singapore is not just, an efficient port located at an interesting location. It actually bet on the logic of intermodal transportation. It created a transportation hub where uh, rails, roads, ships, everything could connect, move across Asia, and where all of that could be governed in a reliable manner. And that's what gave it so much power. And that's the key idea when when you see a new technological shift, think about what is the new system that's emerging, what's the central problem in the new system that I should be resolving, and based on that, can I change the rules of competition, and can I change how others currently compete so that the game shifts in my favor? That's the key idea of you know thinking about AI at the system level, and that's the point that I want to leave all of you with. When we think about AI at the level of tasks, we misunderstand the AI opportunity. But when we think about it at the level of its impact at every layer of the system, that's when we really understand the opportunity of AI. So AI today offers us an opportunity to reorganize our jobs, our workflows, our organizations, our business models, and the way an industry works around a fundamentally new logic. Thank you so much for listening.